Guys, welcome to Hampton Downs Yacht Club. I mean, 2022 GTR Festival. Not knocking the festival, it's not their fault. Rain happens, right? You can see how much rain we've got. So we brought the March up to test a few things out. There was a horsepower, that was lightning. There was a horsepower and grip. We're not going to have any of that. Session at 11 o'clock is postponed until the weather maybe improves. I was potentially going to miss that anyway because I shifted everything out of the garage and had the trailer on the back of the ute and all set, ready to go. Everything done, start the March up. Nah, the March, that is thunder. Hey, there's still more day. Let's see how we go. The March did not want to start. It probably knew it was going to rain. Basically a bad contact on a fuse had overheated the fuse and created an even worse contact, and therefore we didn't have any continuity at that point in the circuit, so we couldn't turn on any of the relays. That was the main power on-off-y system. That it was definitely off. So that was rectified. And I had, at that point, I'd given up and said, oh, okay, no, this is too hard, so I put the trailer away and put everything back in the way. And then I found that it was that, fixed that, and I thought, well, there's still plenty of day, it's not the end of the world, let's get up here. So we've been through scrutineering, and we've been through driver's briefing, and we've been through a torrential downpour. So we're just waiting, really. She's getting wet. She's not very waterproof, so that's not ideal. I don't have a garage, maybe I should have. There is a cruising session on right now. We could go out and do like 120k an hour around the track, but it's not going to test the things that I want to test. So yeah, let's wait and see. I want to go and get some food, but I just put on my race gear and then it started pouring down. I don't really want to get that wet and then go in the car and create a lot of condensation. See how the day goes. Sunday evening. A little while since the video's been up. Some of you have been wondering what's going on. There's been nothing but silence on YouTube. There's been a little bit on Facebook. If you've been on there, you've got the guts of what's going on. But let's have a look. That is supposed to be in the back of the car, not on an engine stand with parts just strewn all over the floor. I'm yet to have a little bit of a tidy up. We've lifted the heads. I'll just wait for you to stop laughing. It's okay. I knew it was going to happen. It's not a big deal. Not concerned at all. The package that we had in there was, in theory, probably good enough, as long as everything was perfect. And things weren't perfect. And so it got a bit of a hammering. And we didn't blow the head gaskets as such. Head gaskets are over here. I've been fiddling with that too. What happens is if you surface finish, here's a good example. This is nice and smooth here, right? And this is kind of rough. I was going to say rungy, but that'll confuse some people. You won't understand the Kiwi lingo. MLS gaskets have Viton coating on them. If you have a good finish on your head and your block, if your bores are wobbling around, which they do on the open deck motors and stuff and things, any highly stressed, this isn't highly stressed, it's only 850 horsepower instead of 300. It's not highly stressed at all, is it? Any highly stressed engine, we put something moving around like this, jiggling and jiggling, moving around while we're making all the horsepower and the huge RPM. If your surface finish isn't mint, if it's rough like that, it's like rubbing it against sandpaper and it'll pull one layer off real quick. And as soon as it's pulling layer off, goodbye. No seal. She licky. So I think the worst part was cylinder number 6. We can see there's you can see that pattern there where it's been blasting away. We've got it elsewhere, but not to that extreme. You can see this second part that's supposed to be doing the sealing is, I'm going to say intact. It's damaged, but it's intact in most other places, whereas she's definitely hammered there. So cylinder number 6 is the one that's probably going to get the hottest. So a combination of things moving around a little bit and the hotter area making things softer, allowing it to move around a little bit more. And we've done head gaskets, and now everyone's already been on Facebook and told me what I need to do to fix it. They've told me I need to put fire rings in and all that sort of carry on. There's pluses and minuses for all that sort of stuff. Currently there's a company, SCE or something along those lines, that makes some gaskets that Athena is another brand they're using, and then the gaskets that they're talking about are called Vulcan cut ring gaskets. Performance Academy have done a very good video on gaskets. I watched that some time ago. It's a couple of years old, I think, and they've done a recent one, and there's lots of people on the mighty internet telling you how to fix this problem. It's not something I was unaware of. I knew this would happen with these motors. We didn't put head guards in when we built the original version of the car because I was keeping the power at a, I'm going to say sensible, it's still stupid for the car that it's in, but I was keeping the power levels somewhere appropriate so we wouldn't have any problems. We didn't. The first build of the car, that was fine. Head gaskets didn't cause any problems at all. We needed to put an electric water pump in to get enough guts behind the pumping system to shift the water to the front of the car and back again to the motor. There's some better scenery. Oops. There's things happening with that too. We'll talk about that later. So yeah, that was fine. And then we converted the car to 4-wheel drive, and I literally used the same head gaskets and swapped them across into another block, and from a front wheel drive block to a rear wheel drive block, which is really pushing my luck. That's a daft thing to do, but I just did it just to see how we'd get on. And I used some CRC copper seal on the heat gaskets, and they held for quite some time until actually we started bumping up the power, and then they didn't hold anymore. What a surprise. So that's all right. So then when we did the sequential gearbox conversion and all those upgrades we did, we spent ages mucking around with it. We put the block guards in, put some new rings in the engine and all that sort of carry on. Then we put the Tomy head gaskets in there. They held originally on the dyno with 500 and something kilowatts at the hubs, which is quite a lot. That's getting right up there for what they would be able to hold. And now they don't hold. So the car's probably done, I think, probably an hour of track time, something like that. That would be a good guess. Most of the footage is there from being on the track. You could probably fish back through the videos and actually put a stopwatch on it and figure it out how many hours or kilometers it's actually done. It's not many. It's not much. It hasn't gone far. But we all know that it's had things going on, stuff and things. The original thermostat that was in the car was not very good, ran far too hot, so we took that out. It's not a good start. It didn't overheat, but it got pretty warm just sitting here. It was hotter than what it should have been. So that's not, it shouldn't have hurt it, but it wasn't good for it, I don't think. And so then we had problems with the dyno doing, it was weird, a firmware update or a software update or whatever, and it had problems with gain control and all that sort of stuff, and it couldn't run the car properly. So that wouldn't have been good for it. Probably shouldn't have hurt it, but not the best thing to do with a relatively fresh engine. And then we had the oil pressure safety settings saga, so we changed to a different type of oil pressure safety setting, and that was rubbish. So I undid it and put it back the other way, and in the meantime, every time I used the car, it was popping and banging and hitting rev limits and all sorts of things. That's not good. That's definitely not good for the head gaskets, but maybe shouldn't hurt them. Maybe depends on what it was doing with spark timing. If it was throwing erroneous sparks in when it was turning the fuel back on or whatever it was doing, who knows. It's supposed to be a fuel cut. It's not supposed to be a spark cut, so shouldn't have hurt the head gaskets. But I mean, Andre would probably tell us from High Performance Academy. He's probably might be more clued up on that sort of thing as to whether it would actually do any harm or not. Certainly, in my opinion, if the engine's not running nice and smoothly like it should be, then it can't be good for it. Especially if you've got the head gaskets right on the very limit of what they can handle, and you do something like that to them, it's probably not very good. So, and then the other thing, of course, we're running at 7,600 RPM, I think. That's a lot higher than factory limit, so that's also another thing that's giving those poor head gaskets a big hammering. So we've got a lot of things that not necessarily bad or super bad, but not great, right? So I'm not bothered. They need to last a season, and then we'll change the head gaskets at the end of the season. They kind of sort of did, but it wasn't a full season. So that's fine. We did a whole heap, I was going to say a bunch. Yeah, a bunch of changes on the car for this season. And that's one of the things that hasn't worked out as quite as good as it should have done. No biggie. It's all teething problems. You go through all these things and you sort them out as you go. So that's all right. So we have now got HKS head gaskets coming. I'll try those. They're hideously expensive compared to the Tomy ones. Tomys are like 160 or something like that. You guys can look it up and see exact numbers, but that's what I remember. 160 US dollars. Like landed here in New Zealand, 300 and something bucks, 320, 340, depends on freight and exchange rate and all that. The HKS ones, they're 380 US dollars. So they're many more significantly spinny head gaskets, right? So everyone reckons they're the ones to use, but some people have said they've seen HKS ones fail and Tomy ones not fail, and vice versa. So just for now, I'll bang the HKS ones in there and we'll see if they hold. We've got L19 head studs in there, we've got the block guards in there, we've got all that saga, and that's, if we travel back in time to 2006, that's what people were doing then, and that worked for about the same sort of power as what we're making now. So that might hold, But in the meantime, I will be building a second motor, a fresh motor that hasn't had such a beating, and we'll be doing something different with that. I don't need advice on what to do. I've spoken with people. We got it sussed. But anyway, let's look at some more interesting stuff. The Flywheel. Clutch is mint, that's fine, it's good. The Flywheel is actually fine, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a front wheel drive style flywheel. They've got a strangely enough, a higher offset, like they're taller than what the rear wheel drive ones are. It's a weird, you'd think with a front wheel drive arrangement being east-west and having only so much room between the chassis rails and to fit the gearbox, and you'd think the flywheel would be shallower, but nope, it's not how it works out. So this is the original flywheel that went in the car right back at the get-go. So this is supposed to be for a front wheel drive box. It's been converted to rear wheel drive setup, and it's been then converted to suit the, what have we got in it now? Quartermaster. But I think they're Tilton plates in there, to be honest. That stack was too high, so we ended up over here and amongst this to fit this in here. It's HGT, Precision Sequential Gearbox, 5-speed. To fit that in there nicely, it's still shiny too, eh? Look, I haven't even got it dirty. I haven't cleaned. Well, no, that's dirty. I need to give it another polish. To get all the height, throw-out bearing clearances and everything correct, I needed to put some shims in between the bell housing in here. This bell housing I have modified, and I have machined it down to make it flat again, so that had some distance changes there. And then with our flywheel being the incorrect height there as well, that's required some shims, which is a pretty common thing to use shims on there. When we first got the car up and running and we bedded in that clutch a little bit, this stack height ended up being just a touch too short, so I had another couple of little short shims on each side. So I've modified the flywheel. My creaky knees. I have adjusted heights and all that sort of carry on to pull this down as much as possible to remove the need for this extra shim, so everything will just be a little bit tidier. I could get a new flywheel made for it, but it's $500-600. Yeah, it's really not going to achieve anything. We'd end up having to remake my transmission mount there and a bunch of other things. So we'll just run with what we've got. I'm happy with it. I'll make that shim one piece. I was always going to, never got around to it. We'll get onto it. Everything else is mint. There's just nothing wrong with it. It's all good, except for the fact it's in a million pieces. So while this is apart, I have lost my torch. Where did I put it, guys? Never mind. There it is. These things are a great little torch, but being black is a really silly idea because you lose them all the time. So while this is apart, I've got in here, we're dealing with cooling and stuff, I've bell-mouthed in the back of this to help the water pump flow a little bit nicer. Whether it makes any difference or not, who cares? I've done it and I think it'll make a difference. So that'll make me happier and I'll be able to sleep at night. And inside the thermostat housing, I've chomped and changed a few things in there, a similar sort of thing, allowing a better flow path through there. And also inside here, I've chopped out these, that's too bright for you, isn't it? That's better. Chopped out those paths there into the coolant galleries around the heads and everything to allow for better flow there, just to help with cooling. 850 horsepower being generated by this motor. Internal combustion engines are only like, whatever the number is, 30 to 40% efficient. So if there's 850 horsepower coming out of the flywheel, there's like a big number, there's like 1500 horsepower of heat being generated that you have to get rid of, which is why we need lots of air flow through radiators. Someone will tell me that's wrong, but no, it's near enough. Rough idea for guys, right? So there's a Pathfinder cooling mod. The Pathfinder, they have a factory plate that goes on there with a big hose that comes around here, and they have a thermostat housing as part of this manifold, water manifold. Helps with flow for these rear cylinders. That's fine. We're not driving in the snow or to the shops or anything like that. This thing will be just up to temp, out on track, go. So I've guessed at it, AN6 hose. We'll just leak some from here into here. This hose pipe, manifold, whatever, disappears, goes off to the front of the car to the radiator and gets cooled down. So while we're warming up, thermostat's closed, so nothing comes into here. So it circulates it through the motor, comes out of these ports here, through this one here, through this one here, and it comes into here, and it goes off that way, and it comes around to the other side of the motor on the back of the thermostat to that fitting right there. It goes back through the water pump and circulates around the engine until the engine gets hot. When the thermostat opens, it actually closes off that port that's there so that the water goes through the motor, through the heads out here, and has to go through the radiator to come back in through here. So in the meantime, when this one's closed off, any gases or bubbles that are generated in the cooling system or introduced to the cooling system with leaky head gaskets, they come up through this T, through a, I think it's AN10, might be, yeah, it's AN10, through here and up to a reservoir that I've got mounted up on the firewall. That's the theory anyway. It seemed to work until we completely shagged the head gaskets. Right, that's it really. That's I got a massive big mess to clean up, and then we've got to get on with work, actual work, earning money, instead of playing with race cars. Right, thanks for watching. Cheers, bye.